Hello. Continuing my documentation of my collection, we're going to go into bookshelf porn, starting with this shelf. Somehow, when I was doing my art and print collection, I forgot to include this Frazetta print that I got. It is signed by Frank Frazetta. And Ellie Frazetta signed this certificate of authorship. First, we'll start with The Madman Omnibus, Volume 1 by Michael Allred. This is one of my favorite series, and it's nice to have it in this oversized format. I don't know what I can say about Madman that hasn't already been said. It's really a fun book. Next is Genius Isolated, The Life and Art of Alex Toth by Dean Mullaney and Bruce Campbell. This is a fun book. It's got a lot of those roughs or bravo for adventure and some of the standard stories. Even a few, I think there's some EC stories. If you're an Alex Toth fan, this is a must-have book. Next is Blacklight, The World of L.B. Cole, a biography by Bill Shelley. This was an interesting book. I haven't finished reading it, but L.B. Cole was really an interesting character, and he did a lot of different art in a lot of different places. And I've always been fascinated by his comic book covers. Some really amazing stuff. This is a great book from Fantagraphics, and I think it's still available. And if you like cool, almost blacklight style art, I suggest you try to pick up a copy. This is RGK, The Art of Roy G. Krinkle, who is another one of my favorites. This book is edited by Richard Spurlock, Vanguard Press, and there's been a few books about Roy G. Krinkle, and this is a particularly good one. Talks about Al Williamson talks about Krinkle and the Flegels, and there's a lot of his great black and white art. Yeah, Krinkle is great. And a lot of the color art, too. Really a good book. And this is Roy G. Krinkle, Father of Heroic Fantasy, A Centennial Celebration by Andrew Stephen Domesco and Barry Klugerman. This is from IDW. It's a huge book, and it's got even more great RGK Roy Krinkle artwork from all sorts of sources. If you don't know Roy Krinkle, you should go out and find out about him, because he was a heck of an artist. He inspired many fantasy artists who came afterwards. This is Tales of Terror, complete EC cover art gallery, and many other great things in these books. This is the regular hardcover edition. This is the limited slipcase edition. And the amazing thing about this book is it's signed by so many great EC artists. It starts with the pre-trends and goes to the new trends, fantasy and the horror and shock, and it has a breakdown of the stories and the artists and the writers. I keep the hardcover on hand for reference, and I use it quite frequently. This one is I usually keep on the shelf. I don't open it very often, but I do like the autographs. And there's Bill, the man of the hour. Next are these Bernie Krigstein books by Greg Sadowski. The first one is a biography, and it's very interesting to learn about Krigstein's life and career. He did a lot of illustrations in different places, and he was a teacher as well as an EC artist, as he is well remembered for. There's quite a bit of art in here. It's mainly a biography with, of course, Master Race, his, I don't know what you'd call it, his magnum opus in comics. A very cool book. Then there was a second volume called B. Krigstein Comics, which is primarily comic art reprints, comic stories. Trying to find a good example of his. This was a great story. Monster of the Seas. Got a gorilla on their ship. That's always a good idea. You can see he had kind of a fluid style. An amazing artist. And this is Squatron number 6, the fanzine that I've had for many, many years. And it has a lot of information about Krigstein and a checklist that was kind of cool to have at the time. You can see that I used it as a checklist for some of the books that I collected back in the day. Fortunately, I let them go. But yeah, Bernie Krigstein's one of my favorite of the favorites. Next is Will Elder, Mad Playboy of Art, which is sort of a biography and a collection of some of his great artwork. He was a master of parody and fun stuff. He made Mad what it was as a comic book. And there's some of his comic art. He was just a great talent. He had a great imagination. Next is Jim Starlin, A Life in Words and Pictures. It's a IDW book, edited by Joe Pruitt. There's little Jim Starlin. He was, he was who he was. He was a great artist. Did a lot of work. Did the first master of Kung Fu. And did a lot of wild psychedelic stuff in the 60s or the 70s. And this book is a fun biography. Learned a lot about him. And there's a lot of great artwork in here. This is the R. Crumb Handbook. I'm Not Here to Be Polite by R. Crumb and Peter Poplawski. It's kind of a collection of a lot of Crumb's artwork. Gotta be careful with the show. I don't want to get demonetized. Not that I'm making any money, but it's kind of a fun book. It had a CD that came with it with Crumb's music, but it wasn't with the book when I got it. I got it secondhand. Next is Sergio Aragone's The Gru Chronicles by the man Sergio Aragones. This is a limited edition hardcover with this signed and numbered plate. Cast and crew of Gru, signed by Mark Evanier and Sergio, number 81 of 1500, 811 of 1500. And it reprints the Gru Chronicles, which reprints the Pacific Gru stories. Kind of a reprint of a reprint. Great material. This is Fire and Water, Bill Everett, The Submariner, and the Birth of Marvel Comics. Very interesting book. Bill Everett was quite a great artist and very, very interesting story. Kind of a sad story, really. But he was there at the beginning of the Golden Age and did a lot of really great stuff, including The Submariner and Marvel Comics #1. And he also did great covers and stories for Atlas in the 50s. Terrific stuff. These are the first two volumes of the Nostalgia Press Prince Valiant books. These came out in the 70s, I guess, the early 70s. And they were my introduction to these early Prince Valiant stories. Yeah, the reproduction was so-so, but the books are good to have. It's great stories and not colored very well. But these were sought after, like in the 80s. They got to be kind of expensive, but now with the Fantagraphics reprints, they've kind of cooled off. And I picked these up at half-price books, I think, for like $10 each. Good old Prince Valiant. From Shadow to Light, The Life and Art of Mort Meskin by Stephen Brower with Peter and Philip Meskin, and an introduction by Jerry Robinson. This is a terrific book. There's old Mort Meskin, hard at work. He didn't do the main titles, but he did really good work. As you can see, this stuff is really interesting. Johnny Quick, he did Vigilante, kind of the second string heroes, but he did a great job on them. And what can you say about The Rocketeer by Dave Stevens? He was a phenomenal talent. This is really a nice book. It reprints his Dave Stevens adventures. As you can see, very nicely colored. Like I say, I don't really have much to say about it except I really, really enjoy it. These are a couple of books by Amanda Connor, who's one of my favorite artists, still working. This is a book of her DC work, which was a lot of fun. I like her Power Girl. And this is a Kickstarter book, Hot and Messy. I can't really show very much of this, but I'll show you the sign page. Hot and Messy. It's really a cool book. It's got a lot of kind of risque art, but very good stuff. And this is a Jeffrey Jones sketchbook. This was kind of a big surprise. I got it in a used bookstore, and I picked it up and I looked at it, and it's signed by Jeff Jones. And this is number 300 of 1200. And I got it for like $20. It was really cheap. But it's got a lot of sketches and finished art by Jeff Jones. Jeffrey Catherine Jones, I should say. And she's passed on now. But I did have the good fortune to meet her several times in the 70s. And she was a very personable person. And I've always really enjoyed her artwork. And this is the slipcase 3-volume edition of Encore by Liam Sharp. There's gold, silver, and bronze. And I bought the sketched editions of all three. Yeah, Swamp Thing. That's the one I like the best. The first volume is like an overview of Sharpie's artwork. I should say Dr. Sharpie. And he's done a lot of work in a lot of different places. Volume 2 concentrates on his black and white artwork. And they also came with these tarot cards. I think I like this book the best, the black and white artwork. You can see is very detailed. And this third volume is a biography, an interview with Liam Sharp. With, of course, lots of his artwork. This is self-portrait. These were Kickstarter books. And finally on this shelf, Star Slammers, The Complete Collection by Walter Simonson. This was another used bookstore pickup. in signed by Walt Simonson. Boom. It's I confess I haven't read this book. Flipped through it. I like Walt Simonson's art well enough, but I just haven't taken the time yet to read this book. It's kind of interesting, though. Well, that's this shelf. One shelf on my collection. Oh, it's probably one of my better shelves with all my signed books. But comment if you like it, and thanks for watching. In documenting my bookshelves, this is shelf number 2 of my comic art collection. First, they've got the writings and drawings of Bob Dylan. I got this book for my birthday in probably 1973 or so, when I was about 14, 15 years old. And old Bob Dylan has had a big influence on me. Here's an example of one of his drawings. Pretty cool, huh? It's for If Dogs Run Free. Next, it's the slipcase collection of New Direction books from Russ Cochran. This is Impact, with great black and white art inside. There's MD and Valor. Next, we have this monster Jack Kirby Fourth World Omnibus. As you can see, it's quite a large book. It reprints in its entirety the Kirby's Fourth World amazingness. Fun book. Next, we have from the excellent DC Archives edition, the Sergeant Rock Volume 1. These books are in full color, and this reprints the earliest adventures of Sergeant Rock and Our Army at War. Next is my beat-up copy of Chandler by Steranko. This was a copy I found in the wild not long ago at Half Price Books. It's okay. It's kind of a prose story with Steranko art. Not bad. Next is Taboo number 4 with an awesome Mobius cover and a lot of interesting stuff on the inside, including this Mobius story. These are kind of tough to find, and I found it in the wild. I Am Blind and My Dog is Dead by S. Gross. S. Gross is one of my favorite cartoonists. I think he passed just recently, but this is a collection of his interesting cartoons. This is not a comic book, but it's sort of related to it. It's Bertrand Russell's Wisdom of the West, in which he examines all the different philosophers, from Aristotle to Sartre to you name it, and he gives a kind of a précis of their philosophy, and it's pretty interesting reading. This is Chroma, The Art of Alex Schomburg by John Gustafson. This is a book that came out in the 80s and reprints some of Alex Schomburg's great covers. He was a tremendous artist, kind of a surrealist before his time. And this is the thrilling comic book cover art of Alex Schomburg. It's a Vanguard book. Came out in the aughts, I think. And it's much the same, except a larger reproduction of most of the covers. Fun book. Next is the old standby that should be in everyone's collection, the Smithsonian Book of Comic Book Comics, edited by Michael Barrier and Martin Williams. And this, from Superman, Little Lulu, Scribbly, and Pogo. It reprints some not always the first appearance, but interesting stories by some of the great comic artists. George Carlson, Basil Wolverton, C.C. Beck, Jack Cole. Really a fun book. Next is Richard Starks Parker, The Score, adapted and illustrated by Darwin Cook. There was a series, I think there were 3, and then like a big book reprinting the 4th one. And I just love Darwin's artwork. Next is Monica by Daniel Clowes, his latest from last year. I don't know, it kind of just defies description. Monica is kind of a interesting character who goes through a lot in her life, and I don't want to spoil it, but it's a book that I highly recommend. Next is And Then We'll Get Him by Gan Wilson. This is a collection of his cartoons from, I guess this is probably from the 80s. And if you're not familiar with Gan Wilson, he had work in National Lampoon and Playboy and various other magazines. He had kind of a macabre sense of humor. Yeah, and this is a sketchbook that I keep on hand. I take it to shows and whatnot. And it's got a couple of sketches in it. I had a character that I used to do called Comic Book Shaman, and I asked Val Merrick to give me his impression of what a comic book shaman would look like. And also Pat Broderick. This is The Twilight Children by Beto Hernandez and Darwin Cook, colored by Dave Stewart. Enough said. This is a great book, great story. Josie and the Pussycat Stories, many by Dan DiCarlo, but I was disappointed in the introduction, and nowhere I could find in here did they mention Dan DiCarlo. It's a Good Life If You Don't Weaken by Seth. This is a novella reprinted from his book Palookaville. Story of, I don't know, this guy, he's like a salesman, and he lives his life kind of reminiscent of Seth himself, I guess. But great story, I highly recommend it. Next is Black Cat Crossing by the great Richard Sala. This is his early work, and it's kind of different from his later stuff, but very creative, very entertaining. Sax Rohmer's Dope, adapted and illustrated by Trina Robbins. This is... I'm a big fan of Trina, and I enjoyed this book. That's about all I can say. This is a beat up old book that I ran across somewhere happily. It's uh, Art of Georges Seurat. It's kind of ex-library book, it looks like. But he was the great pointillist at the end of the 1800s and early 1900s. Yeah, I really enjoy his artwork. Next, stuck in the bookcase is this package of odds and ends, an old Christmas card, hand-colored a little bit by Gus Areola, and another of his famous postcards, and my signed autograph photo of Dan DiCarlo with Betty number 8 there on his drawing board. Liz Bailey was an indie artist back in the aughts. She did a lot of work, and I asked her to do a sketch of Power Girl, and she did this punk rock Power Girl. I was very pleased with it. I'm kind of covering up the address here, but I ordered something from Don Gullert, an author who has done a lot of books about comics and comics history, and he sent back I guess I sent him too much money. This is a postage refund. I just decided to keep the sketch with the check with his autograph. Weird, huh? And this is a print of Power Girl by Monica Gallagher, who I met at I think a Staples convention in Austin some years ago. And finally, the other side of the bookcase is held up by this slipcase version of Piracy and the other New Direction books from the New Direction series. Six came from Russ Cochran. There's Piracy, Aces High, Extra, and the very interesting psychoanalysis comic, which was drawn by Jack Cameron. Next shelf contains my artist editions and a few essentials and Showcase Presents. And also up here is an heirloom picture that belonged to my great grandmother, Myrtle Kite Rex. You can see it's a handmade jug from circa 1900 with a Native American character on it. Starting out with a classic, 50 Girls 50, with art, EC, Fantagraphics EC reprint book with Al Williamson art. What can you say about Al Williamson? He was just wonderful. And these books, I was late getting into these. They were a little bit past my price point for books coming out, and for a while I wasn't really buying that much comics. Next is The High Cost of Dying by Reed Crandall. He was a heck of an artist. He drew for Quality during the 40s, Black Hawk, and then into the 50s he did all kinds of crime and horror books. Best known, I guess, for his work for EC. Very detailed. And Spawn of Mars, stories by Wallace Wood, one of my all-time favorite artists. He had a style of his own, and he really brought it to bear for EC. And finally, in my small but mighty collection of the Fantagraphics EC books is Corpse on the Imgen by Harvey Kurtzman. He was quite an amazing artist. He was an editor. He was very demanding on these war stories. He wanted everything to be authentic and accurate, and some amazing stuff. Harvey Kurtzman. Next is DC Comics, The Art of Darwin Cook. Probably my favorite artist of the 90s, and maybe the aughts and the teens. He had a great style, and his work was really fun to read. Very few artists really achieved what Darwin did. He died way too young. And this is the softcover Golden Age Superman Volume 1. I picked it up. I like the Michael Cho cover, and it's reprints the earliest Superman stories by Siegel and Schuster. Fun stuff. I've read them all years ago, and I just wanted to revisit them, and this was a good format for it. Next is the DC Showcase House of Mystery Volume 1 with the great Neil Adams cover. This book has some great artwork in black and white. Some Alex Toth and I don't know who all, Bernie Wrightson. Good stuff. Next is The House of Secrets, Volume 1, DC Showcase volume, with the iconic Bernie Wrightson cover from the first appearance of the Swamp Thing. Again, stellar black and white artwork by many classic artists. Great stuff. Next was the DC Showcase Shazam Volume 1. Is that a Kurt Schaffenberger cover? I'm not sure. But it reprints the early Shazam issues by C.C. Beck, which were amazing. And also in the later issues, there was great work by Bob Osner and Kurt Schaffenberger, to name a few. And it's just fun to read these old Captain Marvel stories. And finally, we have this Super Friends Showcase, DC Showcase Super Friends Volume 1 with the great Alex Toth cover. The inside is mostly by Ramona Fradon, who is really an underrated great in the pantheon of comic artists. Tremendous stuff. Here we have a Marvel Treasury 2001 A Space Odyssey by Jack Kirby. This is a wonderful, wonderful book. It's just oversized and perfect presentation for the King's ideas. Great book. Next is a semi-random Superman Limited Collector's Edition presents a lot of early Superman stories and features by numerous Superman artists. And here's the Fabulous Fantastic Four Marvel Treasury Edition number 2. I think that's a John Buscema cover, if I'm not mistaken. But the inside is all Jolly Jack King Kirby, including great Galactus stories. And Marvel Treasury edition number 3, The Mighty Thor. Another great showcase for Jack Kirby artwork. The War with the Immortals with Hercules. Next, this is oversized Superman 2 movie booklet. It's not exactly comics, it's stills from the movie with classic stars. And this is a limited collector's edition, Edgar Rice Burroughs' Tarzan of the Apes by the great Joe Kubert. It's an adaptation of the original novel with Tarzan being raised by apes. In fact, I did a book report on this with this very comic book in high school and I got an A on it. Kubert was really one of the greats. And this is the oversized Drawn and Quarterly special edition, The Unquotable Trump by R. Sikoryak. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He takes quotes, actual quotes from Trump. This book came out in 2017, so it's mostly from the campaign, and pairs them up with classic artists, classic comic books, and does a really good job. Wally Wood, Warren Kramer. Captain Marvel and Spawn. And a plot parody. And this is an old French sort of a comic book, kind of a bound edition called Nos Glorias Nacionales. It's completely disbound, it's fallen apart, but I'll try to drop in 1 or 2 plates so you can get a taste of it. It's kind of an interesting book. It's from 1919. And this is an IDW Artist Edition. Gil Kane's The Amazing Spider-Man. It's, if you're not familiar with the artist editions, they print artwork at the size of from the original art, at the original art size. And if you're a Gil Kane fan like me, this book is pretty cool. And this is the artist edition Bravo for Adventure by Alex Toth. The complete story. It's I don't know what it is, 50 pages or something, and then there's an addendum. And then there's some pages that Toth colored himself. Very interesting. Great book. And this is the very first artist edition, the Dave Stevens Rocketeer Artist Edition. This is a second printing. And you can tell Dave Stevens was a hell of an artist. He could do it all. He's particularly good at pretty girls. He was renowned for that. But he could draw action and adventure. Really enjoyed this book. And this is the Mad Artist Edition. These books are massive. The EC reproductions. There's a regular comic book to give you the scale. And this book has art by Jack Davis, Wally Wood, Will Elder. Even more Wally Wood. If you like Mad or just great art, this is a good book to have. This is the Best of EC Artist Edition with this fantastic Frazetta cover. There's the EC Crew caricatures by Marie Severin. Great work by Johnny Craig. Story by Roy Krinkle. The only EC story he did solo. And Harvey Kurtzman. Joe Orlando. And of course, Al Williamson. All reproduced from the original art, the size of the original art. And this is the Wally Wood Stories Artist Edition. You can see his work is so detailed and so wonderful. I could just look at this stuff all day long. He did science fiction, horror, and the crime and suspense stories. He always had a knack for drawing beautiful women. Not to mention war stories. Tremendous. And this is the Graham Engels EC Stories Artist Edition. Known as Ghastly for, you might say, obvious reasons. His stories had a kind of a, I don't know, a spider web quality to them. Really good stuff. This book reproduces some of the early work, like this. And then there's a gallery of his great covers for Haunt of Fear. He was best known for The Old Witch and Haunt of Fear comics. This Haunt of Fear 23 is one of the iconic great horror comics of all time, with the story how horror are we housed by you, about a psychopathic killer. Really great. And this is sort of an archives edition of Binky Brown and the Holy Virgin Mary by Justin Green, one of the first autobiographical comic books. And it's an interesting story. He sold the original art to the full book to one collector, and it's been preserved, and it was printed in this book, the size of the original. Some of this I can't really show too much on YouTube, but there's a few pages just to give you a taste. And this is famous first edition, More Fun #1, which was, I guess, officially the first DC comic. It's it's just a relic of its time. Published in, I think, 1935. And it doesn't have much really to recommend it. Stories like The Magic Crystal of History and Wing Brady, Soldier of Fortune. Kind of one-page strips. But it's a curiosity, and I wanted to have it in my collection. And to close out this shelf, I have Warlock by Jim Starlin. I'm a big fan of this Warlock story by Starlin. This one, it's still sealed. I never opened it because after I bought it, I bought it thinking it was in black and white, but then I read it and it's in full color. And I do have the trade paperback in color. So I decided to leave it sealed to maybe get a trade or sell it someday. And this is Incognito by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. I know a lot is said about these two. I read about half of this book, and I didn't really get into it that much. It's great looking stuff, and it reads okay. I don't have anything bad to say about it. It's just really not my cup of tea. The Best of Josie and the Pussycats. This book was all right. Reprints a lot of. And this is my next bookshelf video in my bookshelf porn series. First is Pupshaw and Pushpaw by Jim Woodring. This is a fun little art book with these characters from Jim. Great little book. Next is Droll, the Droll book by Don Martin. Collection of Don Martin cartoons, including the Nutheads, syndicated strip that he did for a little while. Superhero Women by Stan Lee in Fireside. Is that what it's called? Series. The Cat. Hella. Ms. Marvel. It's kind of a fun book. This is an issue of the Comics Journal with an article by Darwin Cook. Typical Comics Journal. Some interesting stuff. And this is another Comics Journal with Will Elder. Nice interview. And this is Catwoman, Selina's Big Score, hardcover by Darwin Cook, which Darwin autographed for me. This is really a good story. Selina's Big Score. Highly recommended. And these are books from the Fantagraphics imprint, Ignatz books. I was very frustrated with these because my comic shop would never get them all. I'd get the first couple issues and then I wouldn't get the rest of them. But these are what I have, and these books are really cool. I'm just going to go through them really quickly. Delphine, number 1, by Richard Sala. Number 2. Number 3. And I never got to number 4. So frustrating. And Babel by David B. This was kind of a fun book. And number 2, I'm not sure if there was any more of this or not, but very interesting. Ganges, number 1, by Kevin Huizinga, I'm sorry. And I think this series went on in various different formats. I'm not sure if there was any more of those in that series. And this is New Tales of Old Palomar by Gilbert Hernandez. Again, I got the first couple issues, but I'm not sure how many it went, but I think it was more than 2. But 2 was all I got. Very frustrating. Next is Poison Flowers and Pandemonium, a Richard Sala omnibus. Boy, this is a great book. Unfortunately, it's the last work that Richard Sala did before he passed on. It's kind of diverse, interesting stuff. This book is called 30-Second Theories. It's kind of an interesting little book that explains 50 thought-provoking theories, each in half a minute. So I've always been a sucker for this kind of book. Dark matter and dark energy in a page. Heartbreak Soup by Gilbert Hernandez. Early stories at Palomar. These are some of my favorite Love and Rockets books, stories. And this is Fletcher Hanks. You Shall die by your own evil creation. Fletcher Hanks was really a revolutionary, I guess you could say, artist of his time. Very unique style, and his work, as such as it is, it kind of holds up. And John Lennon book, and Mobius #0, The Horny Goof book I've had for a while, and unfortunately it kind of got water damaged, but you can still read it. This book is one of the pride and joys of my collection, Buttock Fetishism by Alfred Kind. This book I won in a fierce bidding auction on eBay, and it came from the Dave Stevens estate. Kyle Baker, cartoonist. I lost my sunlight there, so now I'm going to get some glare. This was a collection of stories of Kyle Baker's kind of autobiographical life as a cartoonist. The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. Illustrated by Peter Cooper. The hardback. I had this in, it was a Classics Illustrated. And I was happy to get this oversized copy. I love his stencil work, the way he kind of worked with some of these things. Marvel Visionary, Jack Kirby. What can you say about Jack Kirby? This is a collection of some of his stories, just kind of random. First Silver Surfer. Not the first Silver Surfer, but a really Silver Surfer story. Thor. Interesting book. And these are Barry Windsor Smith Archives of Conan, volumes 1 and 2, reprinting the classic Barry Smith issues of Conan, Roy Thomas Barry Smith issues. I'm not wild about the coloring in this, but this was a good, nice little collection I picked up at Half Price Books, and so now I've got the full run. Gru and Ruferto. This is autographed by, I asked him to sign it to me, by Sergio Aragonés. And this is just a wonderful story. I got this at WonderCon, and I picked up this name plate, which he also signed for me. But the story is, Gru and Ruferto. It's a great story. Water on the Brain by Virgil Parch. This is a book from the 40s, and it's got great VIP cartoons. It's printed on this really thin World War II paper, so you get a lot of pages in this thin book. And next is Beasts of Burden by Evan Dorkin and Jill Thompson. This is a great series of stories about these dogs that have adventures. Very highly recommended. I like Jill Thompson's artwork on here. And this is Frank Frazetta, Johnny Comet, the Vanguard edition. Reprinting dailies and Sundays with Johnny Comet. You can see it's very good reproduction. This is the Playboy cartoon album. I think it's the first one. That's Jack Cole and Gan Wilson and a couple of others. This is just a fun collection of cartoons. I'm not going to open it because it could get me into trouble. The Art of Harvey Kurtzman, The Mad Genius of Comics. This was a fun book. It's got kind of a biography. I'm not sure if there's an interview in here. Talks about all the various phases of his career. And you can probably tell Harvey Kurtzman is one of my favorites. And this is Harvey Kurtzman retrospective of a Mad Genius, which is an exhibition book from a show of his artwork. Fun. And next is Goodman Beaver by Harvey Kurtzman and Will Elder. This was a fun book. Great stuff. Next is a Harvey Kurtzman Jungle Book. This is the Dennis Kitchen edition. Hardcore Kurtzman here. It's not exactly light reading, but very good. These are the first two Mad archives from DC. They're hardcovers, printing the first 12 issues, and between the two of them, the first 12 issues of Mad in full color. Kind of great stuff. More Kurtzman. Love Bill Elder. And this is Vampirella Archives, the Dynamite Archives, Volume 1. Reprinting the first 7 issues of Vampirella. Kind of indifferent. I was kind of nostalgic. I bought all these when they first came out. Wish I still held on to them. But it's an interesting book. And finally for this shelf, we have Devil Dinosaur Omnibus by Jack Kirby. Kind of an oversized reproduction. Kirby, what an imagination. And they're still milking all of his great ideas all this time later. This is shelf number 5 in my bookshelf porn series. This is Rube Goldberg, a retrospective. It's a funny little book of Rube Goldberg's inventions. This is Comics 2000 by L'Association in Fantagraphics Books. This monstrous book contains 2,000 pages of wordless comic strips by several hundred artists from all over the world. And because the strips are wordless, presumably anyone can read them. The Art of Nick Cardy. These are fun books, biographies and art collections by various artists. Nick Cardy has always been a favorite of mine. The Dick Ayers Story, an autobiography in comics. This is volume 2. I thought I had 3 volumes of this, but I don't know what happened to the other 2. The Frank book. This is one of my favorites. It's great by the great Jim Woodring. Also, I got this autograph plate from something or other. It wasn't from this book, but I keep it in this book. You can see the detailed artwork Woodring puts into the Frank stories, both in black and white and in color. I think there's some color in here. Yeah. This is I-Beam Returns, a collection of I-Beam comic strips by Sam Hurt. I think this was a self-published book. If you've never seen I-Beam, it's kind of a fun strip. Have it placed in Austin. And this is a program booklet from the Dallas Fantasy Fair from June of 1985. This was a fun show for me. I met a lot of my idols here. I got a lot of autographs. I didn't get them all. I didn't get everyone's autograph that I met, but I got John Byrne and C.J. Cherry and Philip Jose Farmer. I met William Gaines, but it was at dinner time and I didn't ask for his autograph. Gary Groth, Jack Jackson, and I met Kane and Kurtzman, but again, I didn't have the booklet with me. That was later. And Paul McSpadden, who was kind of a fan, and Frank Miller, probably the big name that I've got in this booklet. But this was a big convention for me. I kind of set up and met a lot of, like I said, I met a lot of cool people. The Gilda Radner cutout book. This is kind of a fun little cutout paper doll collection. If you're a fan of Gilda Radner, you might like it. Powerhouse Pepper. I think this is a Fantagraphics book collecting Basil Wolverton's Powerhouse Pepper books from the early Timely comics. He was quite a character. And this is Booty by Booty Rogers, a biography collection of this great cartoonist. If you haven't seen his work, I suggest you look for a copy of this book. It's very interesting. This is Tarzan, complete Russ Manning Daily Strips, Volume 1, from 67 to 69. I would like to have several more of these books, but they're kind of pricey and kind of hard to find nowadays. I got this one because the dust jacket was kind of mangled. I got it kind of cheap. But you can see Russ Manning's artwork is pretty amazing. This is Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, 40 times 40. I love rock and roll. It's a collection of stories based on Joan Jett songs by female creators, including this gnarly cover by Tara McPherson. It's a fun book. I enjoyed it. It's kind of a flip book too. And this little book is Understanding History by Bertrand Russell. I enjoy his writing. He puts a lot of, it's kind of dated now, but he talks about China and various countries with things that I think are still resonate today. And these are Tintin editions. They reprint 3 adventures in each volume. They're kind of small, as you can see, and kind of tough to read for my little eyes, but I picked them up cheap and they're fun reading. Man of Two Worlds, The Life in Science Fiction and Comics, Julius Schwartz. He was editor at DC for a long time. Before that, he was a talent agent for science fiction writers back in the 30s and 40s and 50s. Quite an interesting life. Steve Ditko's Static, a little trade paperback, chapters 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 collected. I think that Ditko really liked this Static series. He had complete control over it. I think he published it himself. It's kind of a cool little book. And these are Mouse, volumes 1 and 2. The number 1 on the left is my first printing that I bought when it first came out. The volume 2 is a later edition that I got at Half Price Books, I think. You probably already know everything about Mouse. It's the story of Art Spiegelman's father's survivor's tale of being in the Nazi camps. And the characters are mice and the Nazis are cats. This next batch of books are non-comic related. I'm just going to go through them really quick so you can get an idea of some of my interests. This is volume 1 of the Selected Papers by S. Chandrasekhar, who is called Stellar Structure of Stellar Atmospheres. And my sister edited his this series of books for the University of Chicago, and this was autographed by him. He's a Nobel Prize winner. A biography of the English language. This was kind of an interesting book. I'm always interested in language. And this is the World Family Library edition of Shakespeare. Wild Fruits by Henry David Thoreau. Native Harvest. It's a book of native plants. Then and Now. This is an interesting book that looks at various ruins that exist now and what they look like, what they might have looked like at the time. Interesting book. This is the Book of Proverbs with kind of an illuminated text. And these are little books of transfers, little temporary tattoos with superheroes and outer space theme. So these were made in Japan in, I think, the 50s. Hitman by Garth Ennis and John McCrae. Trade paperback, reprinting the first 3 issues, and I think his first appearance. This was a great series. I really enjoyed it. This is The Wolf, cartoons by the character The Wolf by Sergeant Leonard Sansone. It's World War II cartoons, again on that World War II thin paper. You can see a few examples of his cartooning. popular during the war. Red Rocket 7 was a great little book that came out, it must have been in the early 90s. And this is my run. Number 1, 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, and number 7. You can see it's kind of a sci-fi rock and roll type adventure. Lots of fun. Also on this shelf is this little box that contains this little 300, I think it's an earring or a stick pin. It came out at the time of the comic book. A couple other little pins, an American flag, and something called Rally Day. And this is the Golden Anniversary EC Fan Addict Club pin from 2000 for the 50th anniversary of EC Comics. And finally, there's this patch, Golden Anniversary EC Fan Addict Club 50th year, 1950 to 2000. This is shelf 6 of my bookshelf porn series. This is Drawn in Quarterly Showcase number 4. Love and Rockets volume 3 number 2. All-Star Western volume 3, I think, number 1 trade paperback. Silver Surfer Black by Trad Moore. And Silver Surfer number 1, A New Dawn by Slott and Allred. It's volume 1. Silver Surfer volume 2, Worlds Apart. Silver Surfer volume 3, Last Days. Silver Surfer volume 4, Citizen of Earth. And Silver Surfer number 5, A Power Greater Than Cosmic. This is the Silver Surfer, the Fireside Edition by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, The Ultimate Cosmic Experience. Jack Kirby, The Epic Life of the King of Comics by Tom Scioli. Catwoman, Trail of the Catwoman by Darwin Cook and Ed Brubaker. Batman Year One by Frank Miller and David Mazzucchelli. Starfire volume 1 by Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti. Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen, Who Killed Jimmy Olsen by Matt Fraction and Steve Lieber. This was I bought from Steve Lieber. It's got a little Jimmy Olsen head sketch in there. Popeye with an introduction by Roger Langridge. New Frontier by Darwin Cook, volume 1. The New Frontier, volume 2. As a Cartoonist, an autobiography by Noah Van Sciver. And My Secret Desire by Julie Doucet, also kind of an autobiographical comic. Batman, The Dark Knight Returns, 30th Anniversary Edition. Warlock by Jim Starlin, the complete collection. This is The Atomics, the Super Deluxe Limited Edition by Michael Allred. It came with this signed bookplate by Mike Allred and Lori Allred. This is the Marvel Mystery Comics Archives, Volume 2, and the Marvel Mystery Archives, Volume 6. Amazing Adventures, the Bill Everett Archives, Volume 1. Heroic Tales, the Bill Everett Archives, Volume 2. Wally's World, The Brilliant Life and Tragic Death of Wally Wood, the world's second best comic artist. Very cool book. And this is a little book called Maori Place Names and Their Meanings, a little language book. And Crazy Cat Dailies from 1923. And this picture is another family heirloom. I think that my mother got it when she got married in 1950. This is Crazy and Ignatz, Crazy Cat Dailies, Volume 2, 1922. This is Grassroots, a strip by Stan Line, autographed. Crazy and Ignatz, Tiger T. This is an old coverless beat-up issue of Scribner's magazine that has some groovy artwork in it from back in the day. Including this Howard Pyle article. Nuts by Gahan Wilson, a collection of the strips from National Lampoon. Popeye Dailies, Volume 5, the old first Fantagraphic series. Dailies from 1928-29, including the first appearance of Popeye. Hey there, are you a sailor? Did you think I was a cowboy? Okay, you're hired. Kyle Baker's King David. Blazing Combat hardcover. The Lufine Reader. The Art of Jack Davis. Zorro, collection of strips with a cover by Tom Yates. Zorro, The Complete Classic Adventures by Alex Toth in black and white, Volume 1. The Complete Classic Adventures of Zorro by Alex Toth, all in one volume. And this is Toth black and white. And this is kind of a little fanzine called Alex Toth, The Art of Alex Toth. And this is the Alex Toth Reader. And Setting the Standard by Alex Toth. And this is the trade paperback, the Brinky Brown Sampler. Peep Show, a cartoon diary of the late great Joe Matt. The Complete Crumb Comics, Volume 1, The Early Years of Bitter Struggle. Songs of the Pogo by Walt Kelly and Norman Monath. Comic Book Superstars. This is kind of a introduction to old and new comic artists. Kind of a throwback, pre-internet days. Dan DiCarlo's Jetta. Great book. The Art of George Tuska. Mean Girls Club. Pink Dawn by Ryan Heska, a no-brow comic. And finally, taking up space on this shelf is the Overstreet Comic Book Price Guide hardcover, the 40th edition, 2010-2011. This has been Bookshelf Porn, Shelf 6. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you liked it, like it. And this is number 7 in my Bookshelf Porn series. Pablo Picasso, Art for Children. Edward Sheriff Curtis, Visions of a Vanishing Race, which is a cool book of photography. Native Americans. Very cool book. The Golden Book of Astronomy, which is kind of a fun kids book that kind of talks about astronomy. Slightly foxed but still desirable, Ronald Searle's Wicked World of Book Collecting. Very cool book. So a couple more Native American books. Southwestern Indian Tribes and Murals in the Round, Painted Teepees of the Kiowa and Kiowa Apache Indians. Indian Signals and Sign Language. Troubled Waters. This is a European album about the EU. And from Drawn Quarterly, the Masterpiece Comics by R. Sigurak. This is really a great book. And No Man's Land, the post-war sketchbook by George Pratt. Another great book. Do-It-Yourself, Hebrew and Greek. This is another book from my interest in language. Love and Rocket Sketchbook, Volume 1 by Los Bros Hernandez. And Love and Rocket Sketchbook, Volume 2, also by the brothers Hernandez. There's an issue of Cartoonist Profiles, which I believe that's Bill Gaines on the cover by Jack Davis, if I'm not mistaken. Hysteria in Remission by the great Robert Williams. Woody Guthrie, Take It Easy, but Take It. This is a nice little book I picked up at the Woody Guthrie Museum. Glamour International, number 26, the Bob Lovers issue. The Studio, an art book with Bernie Wrightson, Jeff Jones, Mike Kaluta, and Barry Smith. Cool book. Tarot, Witch of the Black Rose, Volume 4. Trade paperback. The Art of Jim Ballant, Magic in Black and White, Volume 1. And The Art of Jim Ballant, Magic in Black and White, Volume 2. And this slim, lovely volume of the Pre-Raphaelites. And this is my high school annual from 1975, the pilot for the Northwestern, I can't remember the name of my high school, the Jets. Combat Art of the Vietnam War. Crawford Catfish and the Orphan Zozo by Mary Alice Fontenot, illustrated by Eric Vincent. And I have a nice little sketch from Eric Vincent in here. Comics, A History of the Comic Books in America by Les Daniels. This was a seminal book in my formation as a comic collector. It was my introduction to both EC Comics and Fox and Crow. Another important early book, The Great Comic Book Heroes by Jules Pfeiffer. Highly recommended. My copy of the Constitution of the United States and its amendments. This is Conan the Phenomenon, The Legacy of Robert E. Howard's Fantasy Icon by Paul M. Salmon, with a foreword by Michael Moorcock, and a kick-ass Rosetta cover. This is Grease, kind of a fun little children's book about Greece. And Charles Adams, Favorite Haunts. And this giant Matisse book, who I admire very much, Henry Matisse. Great Tapestries The Web of History from the 12th to the 20th Century. That's a cool book. And finally, the Standard Catalog of Comic Books. This is a useful guide. It's like a price guide, but the prices don't really mean anything. But the interesting thing about it is that it lists the comics by the number and by the date. And if you're wondering when a comic came out, this is a great resource. This is number 8 in my bookshelf porn series. And this starts with a stamp album that my grandmother put together for me. It includes a lot of early stamps. I don't know, I never really got into it that much, but I still have them. It's kind of an old beat up copy of All the Funny Folk, which includes Crazy Cat. There she is right there. And I picked this up. It's kind of incomplete, but it's a cool book. And this is Celebrated Cases of Dick Tracy by Chester Gould. This is a book I've had since I was a kid, and I come back to it every few years and reread it, and it really holds up. Comic Art number 9, annual. This is kind of a scholarly magazine, and it's got some interesting articles in it. And Wasily Kandinsky, always one of my favorite artists. Riot on Set, Sir Alfred by Tim Hensley. It's a fun book. Ricochet, The Dailies from 1958 by Stan Line. I enjoy this book. That's from the year I was born. And this is Drago by Bern Hogarth, the Pacific Comic Club's edition. And he autographed this to me. And these are Polly and Her Pals, volumes 1 and 2. Sunday Pages from 1926 through 1929. Some of my favorite comic strips of all time. And this is the NBM edition of Tarzan in color by Hal Foster, volume 2, 1932 to 1933. And this is the very important, the Smithsonian collection of newspaper comics, edited by Bill Blackbeard and Martin Williams. Exposed a lot of us for the first time to some very great comic strips. And this is R.F. Outcolt's The Yellow Kid, a centennial celebration of the kid who started comics. This is volume 1 of George Harriman's Crazy and Ignatz, the complete cat comics, reprinting Sundays from 1916. This is George Harriman's Crazy and Ignatz, volume 2, The Other Side to the Shore of Here. Titles of the rest of these books play on Harriman's great use of language. This is George Harriman's Crazy and Ignatz, volume 3, The Limbo of Useless Unconsciousness. George Harriman's Crazy Cat, Howling Among the Halls of Night, volume 4. Crazy Cat, Pilgrims on the Road to Nowhere, volume 5. George Harriman's Crazy and Ignatz, A Catnip Cantata in the Key of K, Complete Cat Comics, volume 7, 1922. George Harriman's Crazy and Ignatz, In a Yacht on the Muddy Geranium, The Complete Cat Comics, volume 8, 1923. George Harriman's Crazy and Ignatz, Shed a Soft Mongolian Tear, The Complete Cat Comics, volume 9, 1924. These have been the Eclipse issues that went up to 1924. This is the Fantagraphics, Harriman's Crazy and Ignatz. There is a Happy Land, Fur Away. Reprinting 1925 and 1926. And this is the Harriman's, the complete full-page comic strips, Crazy and Ignatz. Love Letters in Ancient Brick, 1927, 1928. This is George Harriman's Crazy and Ignatz. A Lovely Night, A Mice, a Brick. This is 1929, 1930. And this is Crazy and Ignatz, A Cat, a Lilt with Song, 1931, 1933 by George Harriman. And this is Crazy and Ignatz, 1933, 1934, Necromancy by the Blue Bean Bush by George Harriman. And this is Crazy and Ignatz by George Harriman, 1935 to 1936. And this is Crazy and Ignatz, 1937, 1938. Shifting Sands dusts its cheeks in powdered beauty. And Crazy and Ignatz by George Harriman, 1939, 1940. A Brick Stuffed with Moonbeam. Crazy and Ignatz, A Rag Out of Raspberries, 1941 to 1942 by George Harriman. And the final volume, George Harriman's Crazy and Ignatz, He Nods in Quiescent Siesta, 1943 and 1944. And this is Crazy Cat, the comic art of George Harriman. A very nice biography and collection of Crazy Cat artwork. And this is George Harriman's Crazy Cat, the Grosset and Dunlap edition from the late 60s, with an introduction by E.E. Cummings. This is the H.W. Jensen History of Art, a survey of the major visual arts from the dawn of history to the present day, second edition. This was the textbook from my college History of Art survey course. I-Beam, Therefore I Am, a collection of I-Beam daily strips from Sam Hurt. This is bookcase number 9 in my bookshelf porn series. This is Webster's Standard Dictionary. I don't know, I seem to collect a lot of dictionaries. The Penguin Roget's Thesaurus. My Brain Hurts by Liz Bailey. This is a fun comic. Flow My Tears, Said the Policeman Said by Philip K. Dick. It's a little book about the Grand Canyon, photographs. And a book on Georges Braque. And this is a 1940s hardback collection of Barnaby. Bertrand Russell's The Problems of Philosophy, one of my heroes. Another of my heroes, this is Dan DiCarlo 2, the book of his pinup work. Woo! The Best of Gahan Wilson. And this is a copy of the Holy Bible that was presented to me in 1967. This is an ace paperback edition of Pellucidar by Edgar Rice Burroughs with a Roy G. Crinkle cover. 10 Hour of Pellucidar by Edgar Rice Burroughs, also with a crinkle cover. This is Tarzan at the Earth's Core by Edgar Rice Burroughs with a Frank Frazetta cover. Back to the Stone Age by Edgar Rice Burroughs with a Roy G. Crinkle cover. And The Cave Girl, Edgar Rice Burroughs Ace Edition with a great Roy G. Crinkle cover. One-Legged Dancer by Pamela Lischuk. The Shape of Content by Ben Shahn. I would recommend this book to any artist. It really gave me a lot of insights that helped me with my work. The Materials of the Artist. This book may seem a bit archaic, but there's a lot of really cool information. Between Time and Timbuktu, or Prometheus 5, A Space Fantasy by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. True Grit by Charles Portis. Relativity, the Special and General Theory, a clear explanation that anyone can understand by Albert Einstein. Boosting the Mind's Eye, Visualizing for Social and Emotional Intelligence. 20th edition of Speedball textbook, From Pen to Brush Lettering. The Heart of Thoreau's Journals. Tadin by Henry David Thoreau. Whitehead and Russell's Principia Mathematica to number 56. There's so much I could say about this book. I did a whole blog about it. It's really weird. And this is Tintin, Arge and His Creation, a biography by Harry Thompson. Very cool book. Logic Comics, An Epic Search for Truth, which is a comic book about philosophy and philosophers. Little Lulu, Sunday Afternoon. Little Lulu, Lulu Takes a Trip. And Little Lulu, Lulu Goes Shopping. Pogo by Walt Kelly. I Go Pogo by Walt Kelly. The Pogo Papers by Walt Kelly. Dear President Johnson, a book of letters kids wrote to the president, selected by Bill Adler, and illustrated by Charles M. Schulz. Cartooning, Philosophy and Practice by Ivan Brunetti. Mighty Mite, The Ear Mite by Tony Millionaire. Tim Biscup, The Jackson 500, Volume 1. The Portable Dawn by Joseph Linsner. 40 Cartoon Books of Interest by Seth. This was included with, comics art. It was like a little inclusion. These are Crazy and Ignatz, Volume 1, 2, 3, and 4, reprinting daily strips in a very tiny format. Voices of Africa, Its Words and People. It's a very cool, tiny book. And this is a set of Viewmaster reels for The Amazing Spider-Man. 21 stereo pictures. This is an Evanescence CD called The Bitter Truth, illustrated or autographed by Amy Lee. Banana Sunday, a graphic novel by Paul Tobin and illustrated by Colleen Coover. This is Awesome, an anthology comic book published by one of my favorite extinct podcasts, the Indie Spinner Rack. The Slings and Arrow Comics Guide, which is interesting. It's not a price guide, but it talks about the quality of the comic books. Quiddity by Dan Solomon, who worked at a comic shop that I used to go to, and he did a blog that he then published as this little booklet, and he told me I mentioned in it. George MacDonald Fraser, Mr. American. This was a book that I enjoyed very much. Principles of Mathematics by Bertrand Russell. Rascal by Sterling North. I believe that this was the second book that I ever read. This is the autobiography of Bertrand Russell, Volume 1. Bertrand Russell, An Inquiry into the Meaning of Truth. The Conquest of Happiness by Bertrand Russell. Webster's 21st Century Dictionary. This is, they were looking ahead. This book, this is the 1993 edition. Stonehead Simplified. This is like a little tourist brochure. A manual on simple perspective, written and illustrated by L.A. Doust. This is my dog-eared copy of Lampierre's Classical Dictionary. Very fun book. Candide by Voltaire. I recommend this book to everyone. It's hilarious. Alfred North Whitehead, The Aims of Education. And A Preface to Logic by Maurice Raphael Cohn. Ecce Excelum. It's Latin I can't pronounce. It's a book on astronomy. Another early book I read, Kim by Rudyard Kipling. The Story of Mathematics by Richard Mankiewicz. Hello and welcome to Shelf 10 of my Bookshelf Porn series. This is my Raphael Sabatini shelf, so I'm going to run through these fast. These are all historical adventure novels by Raphael Sabatini. Captain Blood Returns, The Hounds of God, The Gates of Doom, The Romantic Prince, St. Martin's Summer, Torquemada and the Spanish Inquisition, The Fortunes of Captain Blood, The Gamester, The Venetian Mask. I believe that Gus jacket is by N.C. Wyeth. Captain Blood with the Errol Flynn movie dust jacket. Scaramouche, the Kingmaker. The Strolling Saint. This is a regular Houghton Mifflin Captain Blood. This is another beat-up copy of The Gates of Doom. This is the Historical Knights Entertainment. Another lion's skin. This is a Collier's edition of The Sword of Islam. This is a super beat-up library copy of Captain Blood Returns. And this is a super beat-up copy of The Seahawk. The Banner of the Bull. The Snare. The Romantic Prince. This is Beleriand. I'd like to just say a few words about these Houghton Mifflin Raphael Sabatini editions. They were mostly published in the 1920s, and they're all nearly 100 years old, and they were printed on very cheap paper. The pages hold up, but the binding is falling apart on a lot of them. This is the Historical Knights Entertainment by Raphael Sabatini. And the cool thing about this book is attached inside is an actual letter handwritten by Sabatini. You can see his handwriting is kind of hard to read, but you can see his signature there. Yours very truly, Raphael Sabatini. And this is another copy of An Historical Knights Entertainment. And it also has a handwritten letter on his stationery. By Raphael Sabatini. I should say that I was introduced to Raphael Sabatini by my late sister Claudia, and she loved his writing very much. And she gave me some of his books, Captain Blood and The Seahawk, when I was maybe 14 or 15. And I've been a collector ever since. And I think I've read just about everything that he's written that has been published in a book. And also I picked up these magazines. This is Stories of Love and Adventure, The Trampling of the Lilies, and The Queen's Messenger. Posthumously, they published a few of his books. This is The Outlaws of Falkensteig by Raphael Sabatini, and The Commissade by Raphael Sabatini, also published posthumously. There's a picture of Raphael Sabatini there near the end. Here we have Machiavelli, the Prince, The Wizard of Id, The Lone Haranguer Rides Again, Mama, I'll See You in My Dreams at Least by Mel Lazarus, Lenin Remembers by Jan A. Winter, The Kama Sutra of Vatsyayana in paperback. This book is the mind and work of Paul Klee. He was an interesting artist. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's the one who did the little tweeting birds. I'll find some examples. He was a very interesting artist. And finally, this book, On the Res by Ian Fraser. Welcome to my bookshelf porn series, shelf number 11. These are my paperback books. Mads Don Martin Steps Further Out. Mads Don Martin Forges Ahead. Mads Maddest Artist Don Martin Drops 13 Stories. Mads Don Martin Comes On Strong. Mad in Orbit. Sergio Aragonés, Viva Mad. Sergio Aragonés and Mad We Trust. Folk Songs for Fun. This has a Will Elder cover. Footprints in the Snow by Kenjiro Tokiyachi. I'm sure I butchered that name. Calculus Made Easy by Sylvanus P. Thompson. My Man Godfrey by Eric Hatch. It's one of my favorite movies. Candide by Voltaire. The Art of Making Sense, A Guide to Logical Thinking by Lionel Ruby. Wittgenstein, The Philosophical Investigations. Vasari, The Lives of the Artists. Milton, Minor Poems. 1984 by George Orwell, with a special preface by Walter Cronkite. Cat's Cradle by Kurt Vonnegut Jr. Life with Picasso. Georgette Heyer, No Wind of Blame. Georgette Heyer, Envious Casca. Georgette Heyer, They Found Him Dead. Dennis the Menace, Where the Action Is. Dennis the Menace, Short and Snappy. Dunnigan's People. High and Lois in Darkest Suburbia. Dictionary of Root Words and Combining Forms. Kaji on the Half Shell. The Terrific Trio, No Man, Dynamo, and Mentor. Tumbleweeds. Tumbleweeds 3. Nancy by Ernie Bushmiller. Charles Adams, Drawn and Quartered. Miss Peach Again. Tumbleweeds number 5. The Portable Thoreau. Virgil's The Aeneid. Marshall McLuhan, Understanding Media, The Extensions of Man, The Autobiography of Bertrand Russell, Little Big Man by Thomas Berger. Carlos Castaneda, The Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge. Carlos Castaneda, Tales of Power. Carlos Castaneda, The Eagle's Gift. Death in Venice by Thomas Mann. The New England Primer. You Are All Senpaku. Macrobiotics, The Astonishing Oriental Plan for Total Health. King, Queen, Knave by Vladimir Nabokov. Solzhenitsyn by C. Moody. Penin by Vladimir Nabokov. The Vintage Turgenev, Volume 2. Harlan Ellison, Partners in Wonder. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Conan the Warrior by Robert E. Howard. W. Somerset Maugham, Ober in der Wille. I think that's in German. Talbot Mundy's Troth of Samothrace. Latin poetry in verse translation. And if you've read Latin poetry, you know it's all sex. Kandinsky, 1896 to 1921. Aldous Huxley's Island. High and Lois, Home Sweet Home. The Jungle by Upton Sinclair. Talbot Mundy's Troth of Samothrace, Helma. Talbot Mundy's Troth of Samothrace, Leophile. Dictionary of Problem Words and Expressions by Harry Shaw. Flash for Freedom by George MacDonald Fraser with that great Frazetta cover. Bertrand Russell, The ABC of Relativity. The Ponder Heart, Eudora Welty. And Before Writing, Volume 1, From Counting to Cuneiform. And this is shelf number 12 in my bookshelf porn series. This is N.C. Wyeth, The Collected Paintings, Illustrations, and Murals. Johnny Cash, biography. The Fur Hat by Vladimir Leonovich. This is a pretty funny book. This is kind of a 2-for-1 Chester Brown comics interview with an interview with Chester Brown and Ed the Happy Clown. Mobius Arzak. Maniac Killer Strikes Again by Richard Sala. Ripley's Believe It or Not collection. This is a tour book from the museum, I believe. The Reb and the Redcoats by Constance Savory. Stories about Sets. A surprisingly interesting math book. Rhymes of the Orbiters, Pioneers in Space by J.A. Coffeen. He was a customer of mine at comic shows, and he gave me a copy of this. It's a book that he wrote and self-published. I think he signed it. 1989. Lost Girls by Alan Moore and Melinda Greby. The Mad World of William M. Gaines. This is biography by Frank Jacobs. I got it when I was like 14, and that was just the perfect age to fall in love with EC Comics. The Spirit Archives, number 24, January 6th to October 5th, 1952. Some of these, not all, were drawn by Wally Wood. I bought all these Spirit volumes when they came out and read them all voraciously, but I ended up selling them. This is the only one I kept. Age of Bronze, 1,000 Ships by Eric Schanauer. I got this at WonderCon 2008. And he kind of sketched it, a little head for me. The Black Hole by Charles Burns. Creepy Greatness. Paying for It, a comic strip memoir about being a John by Chester Brown. Louis Riel, a comic strip biography by Chester Brown. This is the limited edition hardcover with this cool plate signed by Chester Brown. This is Rula, Jungle Goddess. This is one of those PS slipcase hardcovers. It's got a lot of art by the likes of Matt Baker and Jack Kamen. But I'm not real wild about these. The reproduction is just so-so. This is Marvel Masterworks, The Avengers, Volume 1. These are pretty cool books. The reproduction is pretty good in these. I got these cheap at half-price books because they don't have the dust jackets. And this is the Marvel Masterworks, Thor, first volume of Thor, Journey to Mystery 83 through like 109. And this is the Fantastic Four, Marvel Masterworks, the first volume with FF 1 through 10, Jack Kirby goodness. And this is volume 2 of the Fantastic Four, Marvel Masterworks, with Fantastic Four 11 through 20. And the Uncanny X-Men, volume 1 of the new X-Men. This is Silver Surfer, Marvel Masterworks by Stan Lee and John Buscema. It's a softcover book and it reprints the first 9 Silver Surfer issues. And taking up space here is the old Overstreet comic book price guide, number 35, the little Lulu issue. This is the PS art book, slipcase edition, volume 3 by Dick Briefer. This is volume 4. Frankenstein, volume 5. I like these early issues where Frankenstein was kind of a comical character. This is volume 7, and you can see he's drawn more of a horror character now, which was the style at the time, 1953. And this is volume 8 of Frankenstein, the PS art book edition. And finally, this is Planet Comics, volume 1. Hello, and welcome to part 13 of my bookcase porn series. And this is the PS art books Beware, volume 1, and Beware, volume 2. This was a gnarly series of pre-code horror, that great Frazetta cover. And Out of This World, great Steve Ditko work. Out of This World, volume 2, and Out of This World, volume 3, and Worlds of Fear, volume 1. And the Dead Man Trade, reprinting the Bob Haney and Neil Adams series. Great stuff. And this is a little tiny Archie comic. Aztecs of Mexico. Mysticism and Logic by Bertrand Russell. And my old beat up copy of Skippy by Percy Crosby. This is a novel on based on his own comic strip. And this book is Crumbling to Dust. It Rhymes with Lust by Arnold Drake and Matt Baker. Don't ask me what rhymes with lust. Roy Crane's Wash Tubs, the first adventure comic strip. Stop Forgetting to Remember by Peter Cooper. An autobiography of Walter Kurtz. Time Zone J, an autobiography of sorts by Julie Doucette. The Nemo Trilogy by Alan Moore and Kevin O'Neill. The 3-volume slipcase edition. And taking up space between the books there are this little pewter figure of an elephant. This is interesting. It's a deck of cards from Canada, based on scenes from Canada. And finally, this little pewter figure of an armadillo. And also I have these card sets, Beat Characters, Madman Bubblegum cards by Mike Allred and many of his friends, The Goon Squad by Charles Burns, and Frank Frazetta. A Family Matter by Will Eisner, A Contract with God by Will Eisner, kind of oddly touted as the first graphic novel. I guess the first one that they actually tried to sell as such. Ghostly Weird Tales with a badass L.B. Cole cover. This Magazine is Haunted, Volume 4. Here We Go Again by Virgil Parch. The Fortunes of Casanova by Raphael Sabatini. He Done Her Wrong by Milt Gross. The Hebrew Greeks Key Study Bible. I'm not what you call a religious person, but I have read the Bible, and it's not really as unknowable as people make it out to be, especially if you have resources like this. And this is the Layman's Parable Bible, the King James, the Modern Language, the Living Bible, and the Revised Standard Version, all printed side by side. Enduring Culture, A Century of Photography of Southwest Indians. Welcome to shelf number 14 of my bookshelf porn series. If you like these videos, please comment and like it. And thanks for watching. This is my nostalgia comic book shelf, you might say. It's made up of essential marvels, all comics that I read when I was a kid. This is Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, Amazing Spider-Man Volume 2, Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, and the Essential Volume Spider-Man Volume 4. And here is the Essential Avengers number 3, the Essential Avengers number 4. It's got the Neil Adams issues in there. And the Essential Avengers number 5. Next, some good old Kirby, Captain America, Essential Captain America Volume 1. Essential Captain America Volume 2. Essential Captain America Volume 3. And Essential Captain America Volume 4. I might add that I bought all these used at half-price books. Essential Defenders Volume 2. Good Steve Gerber stuff. And Essential Defenders Volume 3. And the Essential Incredible Hulk Volume 1 with that cool Bruce Timm cover. And Essential Iron Man Volume 1. And Essential Iron Man Volume 2. The Essential Fantastic Four Volume 2. The Essential Fantastic Four Volume 3. The Essential Fantastic Four Volume 4. All these are great Kirby stories that I read, many of them when they were coming out. Fantastic Four number 5. And the Essential Sergeant Fury and His Howling Commandos, Volume 1. And the Essential Uncanny X-Men, Volume 1. And this is shelf 15 in my bookshelf porn series. Odds and Ends. First we have the Essential Iron Fist, Volume 1. The Essential Monster of Frankenstein, Volume 1. The Essential Marvel Horror, Volume 1. And here we have the DC Showcase edition of Legion of Superheroes, Volume 1. And Showcase Superman, Volume 1. With Showcase Superman, Volume 2. And the Superman Family, Volume 1. With the Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane stories. And a DC Showcase Superman Family, Volume 2. And DC Showcase presents Wonder Woman, Volume 2. DC Showcase presents Enemy Ace, Volume 1. And DC Showcase presents Justice League of America, Volume 1. Journey to Ixtlan by Carlos Castaneda. I guess I should say a few words about these books. The Lessons of Don Juan. I don't know whether they're true or not, but there's a lot of really trippy, interesting things to learn from these books. And whether you believe it or not, some of it sure makes a lot of sense to me. Art of Dreaming by Carlos Castaneda. Tales of Power by Carlos Castaneda. The Second Ring of Power by Carlos Castaneda. Magical Passes, The Practical Wisdom of the Shamans of Ancient Mexico by Carlos Castaneda. The Power of Silence, Further Lessons of Don Juan by Carlos Castaneda. The Active Side of Infinity by Carlos Castaneda. A Separate Reality by Carlos Castaneda. The Fire from Within by Carlos Castaneda. The Science of the Holy Shroud. I got interested in the Shroud of Turin. I was introduced to it in a night's conversation with Pat Boyette and Alex Toth. They were both really enamored with the story. And rounding out this shelf, I have 2 copies of Richard Sala's Black Cat Crossing. I got these on a deal I couldn't turn down on eBay. I also have the set of Jeff Jones trading cards. So you can make out the hologram chase card on there. Cool set. This has been shelf 15 of my bookshelf porn series. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'd love to hear your comments. And if you like it, like it.